He asked you a question and you began. You said you continue to tell the story of the 9-year-old.
I actually wrote an essay because I wanted to write down my memories before I forget of that 9-year-old. I wanted to tell the story from the 9-year-old side of what it was to come from Cuba and what we went through to get here. We were tuvimos 3 días en el mosquito. So I saw things that I don't ever want to remember, but I constantly challenge myself to, because I want people to not forget. Because even today's generation of Cubans don't know those stories. So if I don't tell them, if I don't talk, I have this big saying that if you don't know where you're coming, you don't know where you're gonna go. And history has a tendency to repeat itself because we don't know our history. We don't know we've already been there.
But this 9-year-old.
Yes.
She wrote the essay.
She did. She wrote an essay and telling her story, and as she was writing this essay, she realized it wasn't just her story. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a story of many children that came during that time. It was a story of her parents, mostly her mother, how her mother basically was disposed of her soul. My mother never went back to Cuba. She's never stepped foot back in, even with her mother living there, because it was just too much for her. And she was never the same person. I had a mother in Cuba and I had another mother in the United States. 2 different people. Because of all the traumatic experiences that I went through when I got here to the United States, basically when we went to California, to Los Angeles, I stopped speaking. And I had to learn 2 years after, I had to learn to speak from scratch. That's why you don't hear a lot of accent in my English. Not because I'm better than anyone else, it's just that I have to learn my ABCs in English.
So you're the Cuban, I know why the cage birds sing.
Yes.
Now, when we speak of this story, will you now that you have grandchildren or grandchild, will you now tell this story in a children's version?
I am actually, my daughter gave me a book to tell my story to my granddaughter. That was my Mother's Day present. It was the best present I've had. So I'm hoping that I will be able to do that from a standpoint where they would be able to understand it.
Una novela de Iskra. But see, we don't know the story. The modern day folks here in 2022, let's date and time stamp this, August 15th, 2022. They hear of a boat every now and then coming up to Florida and what the American government does, whether we're going to hold on, incarcerate, or decide, okay, we're going to send you back. They don't know history of flotillas and movement.
And this is actually, and I tell this all time and time again, this is not just a Cuban history, this is American history. You had 125,000 Cubans migrate to the United States in 3-4 months time. I mean,
that's a lot of people.
This changed the history of our country, of this country. The Mariel boat lift changed the history of America. It's part of our history. And it's not in any books. It's not, it's nowhere to be found. And, we need to tell those stories. And like mine, there's thousands, obviously, but of course, I tell mine. This is the one I know. And I know that it relates to a lot of other people.
Let me ask you something. Have you processed the word sin? Have you processed it? It is synthesized in your life, or you are still struggling?
I still struggle with it. To be honest with you, the first time when I wrote this story a couple of years back, within my family, we've never talked about it. We never talked about what we went through. We never talked about the mosquito. Even in our family, 13 of us came from in our family members. 13 people. Of those 13, 5 of us were my generation. We were kids. My little cousin was 3 years old, and my oldest cousin was 10. So between 3 and 10, 5 children. And we never talked to each other about it. When I posted my story, my essay on Facebook, my cousins put comments on it that they still have nightmares from that.
So when
And we've
speak
never
of
talked about it.
mental health.
We've never talked about it. So I think these are stories that need to be told because we need to get them out. It's for us and for others.
And that will also help to fill in. I was going to use another word, but that word wasn't right. To fill in the gaps in the story of the human immigrant and who that person is. We have various levels, because everybody wants to give us a story of who entered where, when, why, and what time.
Right.
And we know that, okay, then this part of history, and we interned the Japanese, and then they made it through, and then you have those that you did with the Chinese. But this is modern day today.
Listen, Brenda, when I came here in 1980, there was so much discrimination against the people that were coming with us.
Yes.
That when I entered the 3rd grade, I remember it was the first time I ever slapped a little boy. Because he tried to touch my behind. We were the garbage. We were here to take away everybody's jobs. We were, because that's obviously part of what the Cuban government information that was being sold, right? So we were, very discriminated upon. Not just by Americans, also by Cubans. By Cubans from previous generations, by the Cubans that came in the 60s. So it wasn't just, by Americans.
But the Cubans that came in the 60s were discriminated.
Yes,
I know
of
the
course.
history of
And
it.
of course. But then they discriminated against us. They did.
Mm-hmm.
They did. Of course they did.
We turned it into a very strange migrational rite of passage.
Yes.
That's what it becomes.
Yes.
We're not, no, we didn't have it easy. Yes, we had some laws change. Yes, we had some things happen, but no, it's not going to be that easy for you to come in.
Well,
While you're here, we're not going to make it that easy for you to deal with the assimilation process. Because that's what they don't prepare a lot of people for.
I think currently, like right now, I'm having to deal with. I just had my stepson just came from Cuba, through Mexico, and I'm dealing with that right now. And the difference is when we came from Cuba, we knew we were leaving. We didn't know when we were coming back, or if we were ever coming back. We were psychologically prepared to never come back.
That's true.
Right?
I have it clear. I will never come back. I told everybody I will not come back.
Right. So my parents, didn't go back. My grandparents didn't go back. They died hoping to go back to a free Cuba.
Or nothing else.
But nothing else. The difference now is they're asking political asylum to the United States,
To come back.
and yet a year and one day after they're back in Cuba.
But you can see the same struggle with the people that came in the 60s. When they saw the people that came in the 94 that were willing to come back to Cuba as tourists.
Right. It was unethical. And, you know, I was hoping for a change when Obama, you know, when I was all for it. You know, we all were. We wanted.
Who don't?
Right. I dreamed of it. I was so happy to see, you know, the United States flag when the embassy opened. It was a whole ceremony. Brenda knows. We opened a bed and breakfast in Cuba. We helped the people around us, you know, to sell them. And unfortunately, you know, Cuba didn't hold their side of the bargain.